If you are asking yourself, what does it take to be seen on LinkedIn? You're in the right place. Welcome to a Career Coffee Chat. And today we'll discuss what's new and what's trending when it matters to stand out into your target market and your target clients and your target profession on the largest professional platform in the world, LinkedIn. I'm your host, Erin Urban, and I'm a certified career strategist and executive coach. And what I do is I help driven, experienced professionals remove career roadblocks so you can achieve more impact, influence, and income. And now it may come as no surprise to you that we all need to be the entrepreneurs of our careers. And most importantly, what we'll talk about is how to leverage LinkedIn, particularly what's new and what's changing, because as we all know, the only constant in the universe is change, and LinkedIn subscribes to that policy. So if you're just tuning in, please say hi, say where you're from. I'd love to welcome you to the show because it's important to me that you get the most out of this content, particularly as it pertains to your career path and your journey. So don't be shy. Go ahead and put your name in the chat or in the comments or any questions that you have as I go throughout the show and share with you some of these top trends, what's new and what matters when it comes to standing out on LinkedIn. Particularly whether you're a job seeker or whether you are currently employed, not really looking for new opportunities, but want to make sure that your LinkedIn profile does stand out when you need it. Because ideally, we don't want to necessarily have to wait until we really need that job to be standing out on this critical platform. Now, based on what I've learned and the current trends and workplace shifts that we're experiencing right now, many professionals are finding it very difficult and very different strategies are needed to elevate our careers, particularly based on what we're experiencing now versus over a year ago, right? For example, if you are currently in transition and you're in between jobs and you're looking for a new role and you're not on LinkedIn, you're missing out on a major opportunity to connect with potential recruiters or getting those recruiters to connect with you for those ideal jobs that you're looking for. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, I'm happy where I'm at. I don't really need a new job. Well, you definitely want to be on LinkedIn regardless. Now, I know we get busy, we get caught up, and we're not necessarily thinking about our LinkedIn profiles when we're busy at work. And it's also important to invest continually in that profile and having that online presence, because based on some shifts we're seeing, particularly in how networking works and or doesn't work as we move forward, it's very important to have that presence online and build that confidence in who you are as a professional before you need the opportunities, because there will come a day when you might get bored or you want to get a new job or you want to move up or you might find yourself in transition and you need to leverage that network. How are you better able to do that than if you already have that network developed and that online presence established on LinkedIn, right? So ideally what we're looking for here is for people to reach out to you before you need those opportunities. Great to see you, Sadella, tuning in from Sugar Land, Texas. Lovely to see you on your show. Hi, Frederick. He's tuning in from Belgium. Thank you for tuning into the show. I'm very excited to share with you today about how to discover why recruiters may miss your profile. That's right. If we're not leveraging some key tactics, we're finding out that some profiles are dropping out of recruiter searches altogether. Why does that happen? And most importantly, how to stop that from happening. We'll also talk about how to reveal what recruiters really look at and why. We'll also talk about some top pitfalls some professionals fall into when it talks about elevating your professional presence online and overcoming common struggles to elevate your profile. Now, as I mentioned before, ideally, what we want is people to reach out to us for opportunities way before we actually need them. And with the clients I work with, what we do is we elevate our online presence with those clients. We elevate their online presence, and recruiters, potential hiring managers, people that they're connected to, start reaching out to them for opportunities way before they actually need an opportunity. And that's the sweet spot. That's where we want to be. That's where we want to have our profile working for us and generating that attention and attraction, even though we're not necessarily in transition. Now, for people who are actively in transition, of course you want this. So what we'll be talking about is some best practices, what actually matters to stand out on LinkedIn. Hi, Paula. Great to see you tuning in from Kansas City. Thanks for joining. And if you're just hopping on or you're watching the replay later, please say hi, say where you're from. And if you have any questions, pop them in the comments because I will answer them. And I want to make sure that this time is inspirational, motivational, and most importantly, informative for you to elevate your online presence. Now, oftentimes we've heard that, oh, just develop your network. All jobs are found through networking. Not so much anymore. Actually, networking is evolving, and we're still trying to see how that's going to play out, particularly with the introduction of more AR and VR, which is augmented reality and virtual reality in the future of work. But right now, networking is kind of awkward when it comes to online presence. While still we're starting to transition out of the pandemic, still early days. We'll have to see how that plays out. But networking is changing and how it impacts how we find, source, and vet opportunities for our career growth. So it's equally as important now to build your online presence because whether you like it or not, the future is digital. And if you do not have an online presence, the chances of you disappearing is high. So we definitely want to have that online presence. With that said, we have LinkedIn, which is great. It's the #1 professional platform in the world. And LinkedIn changes all the time. So how can we keep up with what we need to do or what we don't need to do? Well, that's what we'll talk about today. Now, this may be interesting for you to hear, particularly if you're looking for a new job. Based on current statistics, more professionals receive job offers through LinkedIn more than ever. So now more than ever, people are being reached out to by recruiters to receive jobs. So if that's not happening for you, then you're in the right place because we'll talk about why they may not be happening for you and how you can fix it. Hi, Gail. Great to see you tuning in from Houston, Texas. Now, it's critical to learn how to stand out on LinkedIn and leverage your profile because as we move into the future of work, we already are in a vastly digital space, and more companies are pushing for that presence online. A lot of companies will not be going back to in-person work. They'll be continuing forward with remote work because it doesn't take a vast leap of imagination to understand they're saving a lot of money by not having people in offices. So how do you stand out? Well, the best way to do this is to leverage some of the tactics many entrepreneurs actually use to elevate their presence and get seen by their ideal clients. So just think of it this way. You're the entrepreneur of your career, and moving forward, I encourage everybody to be the entrepreneur of their careers. And what you want to do is you want to attract the attention of those decision makers in your target career path. So you want to definitely elevate your influence, elevate your presence online. After all, because it's so important for you to be the entrepreneur of your career, now for the foreseeable future, you'll be able to leverage these same tactics. So what we'll talk about is today, what those tactics are, what's trending, what's new. So let's get started. I have 5 top tactics for you. 5, not 4, not 3, 5. So we've got a lot to go through. If you have any questions, be sure to pop them in the chat or the comments and I'll answer them. So #1 is focus on your outcomes first. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, typically, we tend to focus on proving how awesome we are, how many certifications we have, or we have an MBA, blah, 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 blah. Now, it's not all that's not important, okay? It's not, I'm not saying, oh, throw that out. Don't bother to mention it. No, don't do that. But what we need to do is focus on the outcomes we will deliver to the people we want to hire us. And we don't normally do this on our profiles and our resumes. So instead of discussing how many years of experience you have or simply listing what you did under various positions you've held, create outcome-driven statements to help hiring managers understand what their ROI is for hiring you in the first place. It costs money to onboard new people, and hiring managers want to see how you will deliver results. So it's important to talk about the results you will deliver. Now, you may be thinking, oh, gosh, well, I don't have all those dollars and cents. I'm not just talking about dollars and cents and percentages here. In fact, it's probably not a good idea to share dollars and cents on LinkedIn because it's a public platform. So I recommend you shy away from that. Instead, focus on percentages if it's relevant for you. But what I'm really talking about here is how to present the expertise you deliver in a concrete outcome. So let's just say, for example, you're a professional that As a result of the work you do, it grows the business, or maybe it reduces operational waste. So that's an outcome as a result of the work you do. So think of that. What is the result of the expertise you do? Not only do you want to mention that expertise, but you also want to mention the result or the outcome of that expertise. So when you apply your expertise and certifications, credentials, and experience, what is the result of that? And can you target that to something very, very punchy and I would have to say have a descriptor, right? So you don't want to have a biography about, oh, well, I do all these things. This is how this happens, and here's all the details. No one's going to read that. So we need to have it almost like a billboard. What is the outcome? What is the result they can expect? Is that business growth? Is that reducing operational waste? Is that better customer service? What is it? A better client experience? Increased marketing reach? Whatever that is for you, be comfortable with discussing that. Because when you look at an entrepreneur, a good entrepreneur who's savvy and successful in their business on LinkedIn, you will probably notice that they talk about outcomes. Take, for example, my tagline: more influence, more impact, more income. That's what you get as a result of working with me. I don't talk about, oh, I have a certification in this, and I'm certified leadership development, and I have a certification in leadership psychology. Oh, and I'm IEQ and extended disc. You're bored already, right? You're already asleep or grabbing for your next cup of coffee. People don't really care about your certifications as much as they care what your outcomes will be. Then they care about your certification. So it's outcomes first, certifications, experience next. But oftentimes we lead with all the stuff and we don't talk about what we deliver. I think there was a phrase for those who can't teach or they get lots of certifications. Now that's fading a little bit, but we want to lead with the outcomes we can deliver. That's very, very important. Now, where do we do this? Good question. And before I answer that, I want to say hi to Phil. Phil tuning in from Cypress, Texas. Good to see you. Now, where do we talk about our outcomes? Whether that's operational cost reduction, whether that's business growth, whether that's enhanced client experience, whatever that looks like for you as a result of that awesome expertise that you will also talk about, and you will lead with your outcomes first. So we don't think about it that way. We got it all backwards most of the time. We lead with all our certifications and education experience, and then at the very end, we talk about our outcomes. Now, move that to the front. And that entices people to then want to learn more about you. That helps you stand out amongst all the other profiles, all the noise. That helps you stand out. Now, where can you do this? If you want to, totally optional, but if you want to, that banner photo behind your smiling face on LinkedIn, well, that banner photo, that's a place where you can create something fun and targeted towards you, the jobs you want, okay? Not just what you've done, but towards the jobs you want. And you can have some text in there about that outcome, what people can expect with working with you, for you, the companies that hire you, for example. So you could say, reduces operational waste, proven expert in business growth. Don't be afraid to say these things, because if you've done it, yes, then you can say it. Oftentimes we struggle with this. If you struggle with this, I have a top tip for you. You struggle with talking about the outcomes you deliver. Think of it this way. What would a best friend that knows you really well, particularly what you do in your business, or maybe it's a best work friend, what would they say? Or better yet, call them, ask them. That will help you tremendously. Now, the other place you can put your outcome, it could be in your headline. Because your headline is almost like a billboard about you. And a lot of people have either their current role or previous role, or, God forbid, seeking new opportunities. You don't have to do that. That's a waste of real estate. Use open to work, and we'll talk more about that later. But your headline also can be that. Let's just say you have, a couple of expertise in there, but leading that, you have the outcome people can expect with working with you, right? So let's say proven operational waste reduction. I'm a Lean Six Sigma black belt, blah, 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 right? You have up to 220 characters. Now, that doesn't mean you should use them all, because that's a lot of content and no one, quite frankly, will read it all. So be cognizant about being effective and efficient in the delivery of your message. Another place you can talk about your outcomes is your about section. So it's the rule of three. First, your banner, that grabs, wow, that's a really cool banner. It talks about their outcomes. I want to learn more about how they do whatever it is, right? And then they look at your headline. Well, that's a consistent message. So you have the message there, then you bring that message into your headline, and then you explain more about how you deliver that awesome outcome in your about section. Now, for those of you who are currently employed and don't want to send a red flag to your employer, do this cautiously. Okay, so you don't want to make major sweeping changes. I recommend anybody who works with me who is currently employed, and about over half of the professionals who work with me are actually employed looking for new opportunities, then they will probably want to, if they have their current position in there, maybe they'll put a dash and a little bit of expertise, and maybe a couple weeks later they'll put a little bit more in there. So it's small incremental changes that don't send a red flag to your network. Of course, if you are currently employed, turn off the notify your network function in your profile settings, because you do not want to alert your entire network. Now, if you are currently in transition, when you make that final change to your about section, notify your network. It helps actually elevate your views, and it helps you be active on LinkedIn, which you need to be, by the way, at least 3 to 4 times a week at minimum. I recommend more than that. Posting, sharing, not just liking or sending little hearts, but posting, liking, and sharing content that's relevant to the roles you're looking for, not just what you've done. Now, top tip number 2. And by the way, if any of you have any questions about this, what do you mean by outcomes? What do you mean by this thing, Erin? Or what should I do about whatever it is? Please pop it in the comments. I'll be happy to answer them. This is your time too. I want to make sure it's relevant to you. So, number 2, top tips and trends to help you stand out on LinkedIn is be future focused, not just pondering the past. So what do I mean by that? Well, too many dossiers are obituaries. They talk about everything that we've done, which I'm not to say that's not important. That's not what I mean. And we need to be targeted on the roles we want. While relevant career highlights and contributions are very important, it's most important to be focused on the roles you want, not just what you've done, if that makes any sense. So what you want to do is leverage your career target as a lens by which you create all the content for your resume, for your LinkedIn, and also develop your contribution statements. As I shared with a client last night, he asked, well, how can I really focus in his contribution statements more on what I want? He's looking for a CFO role. I said, okay, great question. One of the things you need to consider is what are they looking for in CFO roles? So when you look up those job descriptions, and I recommend getting a spectrum of job descriptions that are ideal to types of roles that you're seeking. Location is immaterial at this point. We're really just looking for examples. Okay. And what we do is we analyze those different examples, and we see what they ask for. And if there's commonalities, we definitely want to speak to those commonalities in our profile and on our resume. And we also want to ask questions from those job descriptions to help us develop our career contributions. For example, if it says, we want you to be savvy in this program and be able to deliver XYZ, you can ask yourself the question, do I have an example of how I'm savvy in this program to deliver XYZ? So you can take each bullet point that they ask for, they talk about the roles, responsibilities, and things that you'll do, and ask yourself a question. Do I have an example of? Can I articulate my contribution here, right? So that will help you tremendously in developing your contributions and what you say and how you frame it. And most importantly, it's relevant to what you're looking for. This is extremely important. Most people don't. They just wing it. They're like, well, I did this, blah, I did that, blah, and they just barf up content. Well, yeah, I guess content's better than nothing. Trust me, it's better than nothing. And it's much more helpful if it's targeted on where you want to go, not just where you've been. Because where you've been is probably not where you want to stay, right? So if you want to move forward, you want to evolve, or you want to pivot your career, you're thinking about making a career shift, you definitely want to leverage this type of analysis to help you make that shift, help frame the content you discuss, the words, the context, the skills, the expertise, the language that they use to help be relevant to those roles, because it'll make, for one, with your resumes, it'll make you a whole lot higher job match when you apply online. And for your LinkedIn, it'll help you stand out when recruiters search for profiles like yours for the roles you want, not the roles you don't. Make sense? So reverse engineer by pulling up these different examples of your target roles and developing your contributions and your content based on what they ask for. This is very important. So don't just talk about what you've done, which is important, but talk about what you've done in the context of where you want to go. And that's what I do with my clients, is help them tell the story based on where they want to go, not just where they've been. Because rehashing the past basically keeps you in the past. So if you want to move forward, we need to think in terms of that. Now, let's see. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know, because this is important information. I want to make sure that you are getting what you need based on your own personal journey. Now, number 3, top tip number 3, tell a relevant story in your profile. Probably not a big shock based on what I just discussed with you. But let me explain why, okay? Because sometimes it's very helpful for you to really sink your teeth into something other than, well, Erin said I needed to do this. Let's explain why. Our brains look for patterns. So anybody, any human brain looks for patterns. It's one of the beautiful things about being a human being and having a human brain. And your profile should have a theme that hopefully supports the roles you want and the ones you're looking for, not just where you've been. This helps decision makers and recruiters pull the trigger on hiring you. Not that recruiters hire you, they don't, but it helps decision makers pull the trigger on hiring you, and recruiters pull the trigger on calling you in the first place, because they'll only call a limited number of people, okay? Any dissonance in your profile may create hesitation. So take, for example, if your profile looks like a patchwork quilt, well, you were sales and you're a project manager and then you're a customer service and bleh. Okay, what's the common theme? And can we express that? Right, in sales, were you really on the project side of sales? I'm not even sure there is such a thing. And project management, were you more focused on customer service? Is there a theme? So if maybe it's customer service, then maybe in sales, you're really focused on that customer service and project management. Maybe you're on the customer service side, project management, and then you kind of tell that theme and help tidy that thing up to give a consistent story in your LinkedIn profile. Because oftentimes when I review LinkedIn profiles by people who had a variety of different work experiences, it really does look like they've been all over the place. So we need to tell a story that says, hey, I know what I want to do, and I want to do what you're looking for, right? Based on the roles you're seeking. How you might know if you're misaligned is because you'll either not get any action at all on your profile, or B, you'll be reached out to for jobs that you don't want. So if you are getting reached out to a lot for jobs that you don't want, or sometimes if only reach out you get is for jobs you don't want, then your profile is not in alignment with where you want to go in your career. So it's very, very important to target it and make it more aligned to based on where you want to go. Also, big tip for you, do not be afraid to prune your profile. If you've ever seen a bonsai tree, you'll probably understand that bonsai trees are not created that way naturally. Okay, they're caretakers, because they are living works of art. They have caretakers who carefully prune and shape them to be the visual embodiment of what they want them to be. That's kind of like your LinkedIn profile. It's up to you to prune and shape that LinkedIn profile to be the embodiment of what you want to be. And where you want to go in your career. You don't have to hold on to everything just because you've done it. Make sense? And another top tip, as I told my client yesterday, no one has a microscope into your career history. Within reason, it's okay to estimate and express it in the terms of where you want to go, as long as it's true and authentic to you. Make sense? Some of us have held position titles that did not even come close to describing what we actually did. And if that's the case, then you probably want to have the actual position title hyphenated by what you actually did, and maybe a dash, and say, okay, this is what I actually did. They called me this, which meant nothing, but this is what I actually did. It's okay. It's your career. It's your professional history. You own that. Make sense? Okay, so top tip number 4. What recruiters look for in your profile? And some of you are thinking, gosh, took you that long to get to it? Yes, because we need to build up to it and help you understand how to build that foundation to get to this point, because if you don't have the foundation, you won't show up. So what recruiters look for in your profile? Well, I want to help you understand why some people are falling out of recruiter searches. And this is very important, particularly if you're in transition or thinking about making a career pivot. So let's say you're on one career path and you're a geophysicist, for example, and you want to get out of that. Well, this is really important. So please pay attention. The most common search by recruiters in LinkedIn Recruiter, which is a back of the house feature recruiters use to find candidates like you, is by current position title. So let me repeat that. The most common search in LinkedIn Recruiter is by current position title. Current. Can you see how this is a problem? Let me know in the chat if you have a current position title or not. Now, if you're currently employed, perhaps so. Or maybe you've put a filler position title in there, and that also works. But let me explain how this thing works. And first of all, before I go there, let me explain why. It's not that they're trying to be mean against people who are in transition actively in between jobs, okay? They're not trying to exclude you. It's actually not a conscious choice that they're doing. What they're doing is they're trying to exclude people who have had this position title several positions ago, and now they're the head of whatever or VP of such and such, and that's just a waste of their time. So they don't want to look at those people. They want to look at current titles. So if they're looking for a mechanical engineer, they're going to type in mechanical engineer, current position title, and click current position title. So if you do not have a current position title, this is a problem. It's a big problem for professionals who've been out of work, who are currently in between jobs, that have an end date on their prior position, and they don't have a current position noted on their LinkedIn profile. Now let's see, Sedella said, I do, regional medical director. Good for you. All right, good. Phil says property manager. Phil, hyphenate that sucker and put project manager. Very important, because I know what you're looking for. Well, most importantly, maybe you want to put IT project manager, be even more specific. So, or maybe the type of project management work you want to do. You can even drill that down even more. So you can you can put a dash and then put that additional information in there. So because, the reason I say that is because if you're seeking career shift and your most recent title is miles away from where you want to go, that can hurt you. Amin says, hello, Aaron. Sometimes titles do not fit with job descriptions. Do we need to change? Let me find my cursor here. Where's my cursor? There it is. Do we need to change job titles to avoid confusion? Good question. So if your job title, so let's just say you had a job title or you have a job title that does not align with where you want to go, I recommend you put a dash or a pipe or some sort of separator there, and then put in the titles of what you want to accomplish, if it's relevant to that specific position. So let's just say, like I just mentioned, you had a position title. They called you this title. Maybe it was, I don't know, chief people expert. I see this happen. Companies have these really cool titles. Chief people expert. Well, nobody does searches by chief people expert. They're looking for talent managers or talent acquisition agents or HR professionals. They're not looking for chief people experts, right? And so we need to have relevant titles on our LinkedIn profile to show up in those searches. If we don't show up in those searches, because that's the most common search, is by current position title. So if you have titles, or a title or titles in your past, you're trying to tell a theme and a story like I mentioned earlier, make sure that title is aligned with what you actually did. That makes sense. Now, for those of you who are seeking a career pivot or a career shift, hang out for a second. I'm going to tell you what we need to do. Gail mentions she's a financial controller. Good for you. Gail, if there's anything else you want to search for other than financial controller, make sure you put a dash or what have you, a pipe or a symbol, and separate and make those position titles a part of your current title. Because irregardless of whether you're currently seeking or you're currently employed and looking for opportunities, either way, it's critical to stand out for, guess what, the jobs you want, right? So you want to stand out for the jobs you want, not the jobs that you don't want. And you want to stand out in those recruiter searches. So for those people who are in between jobs and you don't have a current position title per se, create a what I call in transition role. So you'll actually go into your experience section and you'll create a position with the title or titles of the types of jobs you want to seek. You can separate them by a dash, you can separate them by vertical pipe or vertical slash, whatever, it doesn't matter. But you want to put all those position titles in if you're currently in transition and you do not have a current job. Okay, create a current quote unquote position with all of the titles that you were looking for. Then what do you want to call yourself? Well, for the company, you can actually put the company name as in transition. So you're telling a true story. You're not being inauthentic and trying to say, oh, I have a job, but you really don't. You can put it in transition. And then you can put a description. So oftentimes under experience sections, under positions, you can just have a descriptor about that position. Tell people the skills and expertise that you will leverage to net the outcomes that they want to see, right? So based on that analysis we talked about earlier, based on these job descriptions you looked at, what are they looking for? Make sure you talk about that in this quote unquote current position. Now, for those of you who are currently employed but looking, take a deep breath. It'll be okay. We have to be a little bit more cautious about how we approach this. We can't just change your current position title that much, or can we? So you know you and you know your career. What do you feel comfortable with doing? Because each company has different policies about how much they stalk professionals' LinkedIn profiles. Some don't even bother to look at them. Some are all over them. It just depends on your organization and how the comfort level you have here. One of the strategies you could use, I've leveraged with other clients, is you can actually hyphenate your current position title. So you're currently employed, you can hyphenate that position title, put a dash in there and say, you know, other types of engineering. So if you're currently, I don't know, a petrochemical engineer, maybe you take petrochemical off and you just have engineer, and then you put a dash and you can put other types of engineering that you also have transferable skills into, right? Or the types of roles you're looking for. Or you could say engineer, energy, renewables, blah, 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 if you're thinking about making this shift, if you feel comfortable doing that, okay? Sometimes people don't feel comfortable doing that, so you have to be a little bit more circumspect about it. The other strategy we've used is that we've actually created, like I mentioned before, for those people who are in between or in transition, we actually created a position under your experience section, but we just place it underneath your current position. What we do is we title it with all the types of roles that you're looking for. We don't label it in transition. We give it something else like self-employed or consultant or something like that. So it doesn't send red flags that I'm looking for a job. We have a start date. Doesn't matter what start date, by the way, very much. And you can also, and you want to make sure it's a present role, a present position, but don't stop your current actual employed position, okay? So don't stop that one. You can actually drag it and place it underneath your current position. And that's another way to show up as it's a current position. It doesn't matter. You can have 2 current positions. That's right. You can have more than one. You don't have to stop one and then start another. You can have multiple current position titles. So that's another way around it. You know, work with what you feel you're comfortable with if you're currently employed. Also, don't shy away from the hashtag open to work feature on LinkedIn. It's extremely helpful to help you show up in recruiter searches as an active person looking on LinkedIn. Now, whether you are employed or not, you can use this feature. If you're in transition, go ahead, turn it on, get the little green thing, open to work, it's fine. If there's one kind of silver lining from all of this craziness that we've been through over the past year or so, the stigma of those people being actively in transition is fading tremendously. I mean, it would be very weird for somebody to go, so why is it you haven't been employed for this year? Duh, there's a pandemic. Hello, have you lived under a rock? People normally don't ask that question anymore. It's not a big deal. They know a lot of people are out of work, and it has nothing to do with their expertise or ability, okay? So that stigma is fading. So go ahead and use the open to work feature if you're currently employed and you don't want to let people know. Totally get that. You can still use open work to feature. You still use the open to work feature. However, you want to turn on available to recruiters only. So what that does, it tells LinkedIn not to show your profile, not to show that you're open to work for any recruiters affiliated with your company. Okay, so go ahead and use it and be circumspect about it. Click that recruiters only if you're concerned about your current employer. Obviously, you don't want the green ring to show up on your profile photo. So let's see, where is the pipe on the keyboard? Asked Gail. Okay, well, Gail, the pipe on the keyboard is actually just under most American keyboards. Okay, this is American keyboards only, under your backspace button. So you'll have there's two different slashes, backslash, I don't know, and you also have the vertical pipe. So that's where it's found on the keyboard, and that's one of the reasons why I use vertical pipe so often in the types of content I create for my clients, because it's found on the keyboard. So it's recognizable. It's much easier to deal with than the symbol or a little dot or a triangle or whatever, right? So much easier to deal with. Oh, yes, and it was already answered by somebody else. Thank you, Matthew. I appreciate that. So any questions about the content I have shared with you so far, please let me know. I'm very important to me that you get the value for your customized, personalized experience. So let's talk about number 5. So top tip number 5. What's the story that you're telling yourself? So we talked about how important it is to tell a story, have a theme, what's that story saying, is it relevant to the jobs you want, etc. Being able to communicate that in your LinkedIn profile. But what's the story you're telling yourself? Because you can have all the best content in the whole world, but the story you're telling yourself is I can't, or I won't, or it'll never happen. Guess what? It won't happen. It's rare that we outperform our own expectations. Let me explain why. My question for you is, did you know that the narrative that you have been internally or communicated out loud actually defines your life experiences? Last night, I had my mother over for dinner, and I took her back home, and we're standing on the front porch looking up at the stars, beautiful stars, this beautiful big dipper right there in the sky. And we're talking about, this and that. And we had just actually chased a cow out of the yard. Welcome to the country. We chased a cow out of the yard back into the field. And she said to me, she said, in life, it's not one thing, it's another. And I said, don't say that. Don't say that. She was like, oh, yeah. She's I share with her all my learnings from neuroscience and what I'm studying and the research that I'm doing and what I'm seeing and working with my clients and all these things and transformations that we're getting. And she's like, oh, yeah. Gosh, these colloquialisms just find their way into our language, and we just really have to be very aware of what it means to us, and most importantly, what it means to our brain and how it shapes our future. I was like, that's right, we do. It's things that we say every day, like, well, if it's not one thing, it's another. No, it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be that way. In fact, I'm even challenging this colloquialism or common phrase that we only grow through hardship. No, we don't. Actually, we don't only grow through hardship. That's a falsehood. That is not true. You don't have to have hardship to grow. Who said that? But by saying that, that's the kind of experience we tell our brain we expect. And that's not good, because our brains are highly advanced filters, extremely highly advanced filters. We receive over 11 million bits of information per second. But we only process 40 to 50 bits of information per second, which is still a lot, still impressive. What that means is your brain is a highly advanced filter. And what it filters is based on what your mindset or your bias tells it to. The story you tell yourself, you articulate internally or out loud, defines what your life expectations are. Real or imagined. Okay, what do you expect out of life, real or imagined? And the more I learn about neuroscience and about conscious language coaching and choices that we make for ourselves, is one defining element between those people who are wildly successful and those people who are still in the struggle bus is the story that they tell themselves. So my challenge for you is for these next couple weeks, think about what is the story you're telling yourself? What is it that you're articulating internally or out loud? And some of these things are totally unconscious. They're phrases that find their way into our language. Like I was talking to a client a couple weeks ago, and he kept saying, well, I'm such and such age, and time is running out, time is running out, time is running out. I said, may I share something with you? He said, sure. I was like, I'm hearing a repeated phrase from you that time is running out. He goes, well, yeah. I was like, do you expect to expire sometime soon? Because that phrase is not, I said, do you feel like that phrase is supporting your goals? He thought about it for a second. He goes, no, it's not really, is it? I was like, not really. Not really. It's not helping you. It's not supporting your goals. So when you become aware of something that you articulate internally or articulate out loud, is that story you're telling yourself supporting your goals? Because here's the thing. The story will find its way into your resume, into your LinkedIn profile, into your networking conversations, then the conversations you have in interviews. Yeah, particularly under stress, that story will find its way out because it's automatic. It happens without even thinking about it. And the story will find its way out in times where we don't want it to. So we need to be careful about what that story is we're telling ourselves. If we're telling ourselves something that's sabotaging our goals, then it will continue to sabotage your goal. So ask yourself, is the story I'm telling myself, these phrases that I've added into my language and these conscious language choices that I'm making, is it supporting or sabotaging me based on the goals I want to achieve? Right? So let's see. Going back to Sadella said here, she said, I'm a big believer in manifesting what you speak. So be careful what you say. Absolutely. Be careful what you say to you because you're listening. Very, very important to be aware of this, because when I work with clients, the number one stumbling block is always career contributions. Talking about what we've done based on where we want to go, articulating that, yes, we do have impact. Yes, we do have influence. Yes, we have done good things. It's okay to have done good things. Because, and inevitably, we start peeling back the layers of the onion. Inevitably, the reason why they struggle with this is because the story, the narrative they have, the labels, the conscious choices they have, the framework around who they are, tells them that it's not okay to accept over a certain amount of happiness, abundance, success in their life. We all put limitations on how much happiness, success, and abundance we'll actually accept in our lives and our careers. So we have to be careful about what language we use internally or externally. And how are we framing that? And what do we believe? And is it a false or true label? Oftentimes these are false labels. If you feel like you are a, imposter syndrome, which is oftentimes you props up in leadership positions and that sort of thing, and other types of roles as well. If they only knew, or I'm not really as good as they think I am, or whatever. Nobody's perfect, first of all. We all have something to learn, and that's a wonderful thing. It gives us something to look forward to, something to evolve and grow into. That's a good thing. And also, if you're feeling like, gosh, I don't belong here, well, the chances are you're actually not an imposter, you're a pioneer. Look around your familial structure. Did that familiar structure actually, support where you are now? Or are you the first out of your old family or those people that you know to have gone as far as you have in your career, your job, your education, what have you? Right? So it's a whole host of very interesting factors that drive how much happiness, success, and abundance we accept in our careers and our lives. So think about that story that you're telling yourself. Because the story will find its way into your resume, the story will find its way into your LinkedIn profile, and we want to make sure that supports where we want to go. Now, please do ask any questions before we wrap up. to give you a few closing comments here. And by the way, Paula said, my current company is currently seeking opportunities. Okay, Paula, you don't need to have currently seeking opportunities. Let me share that with you, all of you who are tuning into the live show now. My current company is currently seeking opportunities. Titles are project manager, program manager, business analyst, operations analyst, and vendor manager. These are all great. So you have all the role titles in there. Those are perfect. What you don't need is the current seeking opportunities. You don't need that, particularly if you turn on the open to work feature, because that tells recruiters that you're currently seeking new opportunities. You don't actually have to articulate it. Most people who are genuinely recruiters and have access to the recruiter function won't need to have the currently seeking opportunities in your title, because they'll have access to Recruiter, LinkedIn Recruiter, which does all that for them. It's automatic. The only people that would want to have access to the currently seeking opportunities are oftentimes scam artists who are looking, through a cheap and cheerful version, less expensive. They'll do a less expensive search. They won't invest in LinkedIn Recruiter because they cost a lot of money. And they'll do a less expensive search, and they'll search for open to work or currently seeking opportunities, and your name might pop up, and then you'll get that email, or that InMail. We have this wonderful opportunity for you. Just, pay us $500 to be trained, or give us your social security number. So, Sedella says, can you please repeat number 5 again of your top tips? Well, it was a lot. It was a lot around, story you tell yourself. So number 5 is, what's the story you're telling yourself? So what's the story you're telling yourself? So what's that internal story that you're telling yourself, or what you articulate out loud? And by the way, that internal story that you're telling yourself you think nobody can hear, it comes out. It comes out in your body language. It comes out in interviews, particularly under stressful situations, because under stress, our limbic brain is oftentimes driving the conversation, not your prefrontal cortex, which is not a good thing. So in interviews, that's one reason why you definitely want to relax and calm your brain and body. That way your prefrontal cortex can take over and actually have an articulated conversation versus a fight and flight one. So yes, number 5 is, what's the story you're telling yourself? Because the narrative you have internally, communicated internal or out loud, defines your life experiences. Because our brains are highly advanced filters, we receive over 11 million bits of information per second, but we only process 40 to 50. And it filters out anything that is not inside of the parameters that we have defined. And we define those parameters by the story we tell ourselves internally and articulate out loud. Like I mentioned before, the story of my mom. It's not one thing, it's another. No, it doesn't have to be that way. Okay? Or another, a coaching colleague actually shared with me. She said, I found out I was saying life is hard a lot. And it was defining my life experiences. Like, yeah. It's little phrases, colloquialisms that we find our way into our language that, true or false, okay, real or imagined, but, as far as their authenticity is concerned, but it could be false labels that are defining what you'll experience in your life. And what the brain does is, because that defines the parameters of what you will experience, it filters out everything else. And when you are needing to respond to a situation, you will respond automatically based on that outline you defined. Yeah, scary stuff. So hopefully this helps you understand how to articulate your story online. Make sure that you elevate your online LinkedIn presence, because now more than ever, it's important to elevate that presence, because if you are not online, you might disappear based on where the future of work is going. Vastly digital space, AR, VR, augmented reality, and virtual reality they are actually expected to grow by $27 billion this year alone. Google and Facebook have already invested in AR and VR technology. And one of the reasons is because the virtual experience is so difficult to really get to know somebody, to build a relationship and network, or those in at work meetings kind of so you don't get that in-person experience. And they're trying to recreate that in-person experience without being in person, because many companies will not go back to the way it was. Okay, let's just get that out of your head. If you're thinking it's going to go back to the way it was, it's not. Okay, once the pandemic is quote unquote over, we're out of this, it's not going back to the way it was. It will be different. And we're still evolving and seeing how that will change. There'll be some blended models, some at work, some at home, but a lot more virtual reality, a lot more virtual work environments. That's why people are investing in virtual reality. Now, this is a theory, okay? Total theory based on my knowledge, my research that I've done. It's not proven and not based on any quote-unquote fact other than what I extrapolate based on this data. But I theorize in the next 5 to 6 years, maybe less, you never know. Technology is taking off like a rocket, and the rate of innovation is so fast now. 5 to 6 years, when you want to go to work, you will don your virtual reality headset and all the other accoutrements, sync with your avatar online. It's coming. So we want to have an online presence, because if nothing else you get out of this is well over 95% of recruiters leverage LinkedIn to source and vet ideal candidates. Well over and above applying through traditional means, online applications, and the like. They may look at those, but because they don't understand ATS very well either, oftentimes, some do, some vast majority don't. They will look on LinkedIn using LinkedIn Recruiter as well. So you want to have that online presence elevated. So expect more on that in months to come, more on the narrative we're telling ourselves and articulating out loud, how that's driving our outcomes, because all the research I'm doing with all my coaching clients is definitive. The difference between those people who were wildly successful and those people who are still on the struggle bus is the story you tell yourself. That conscious language choice defines our life experiences. It's been a pleasure talking to all of you today, sharing this information. Very excited about where we're going with Career Coffee Chat. If you would love to do so, please tune into Career Coffee Chat podcast. If you're currently listening to the podcast, give us a like, give us a thumbs up, or give us a nice rating, depending on the platform you're engaging with. If you're looking at the Career Coffee Chat live replay, the video replay later, please say, hey, hashtag replay. Here I am, who I am, where I'm tuning in from, and here's my questions. I will be notified, and I will get back to you. Until next time, ta-ta for now. And elevate your career.